The Rustbucket Retriever lived up to its name and then some. Every groan of its stressed plating, every flicker of its often recalcitrant lights, was a testament to Captain Miles Corbin's dwindling credit line and the increasingly desperate nature of their salvage runs. This last one in the Viridian cluster had been a total bust, a derelict freighter picked clean by pirates or, worse, a rival salvage crew with better intel and deeper pockets. Now they were limping, low on fuel, lower on morale, and far from any friendly port. Corbin scowled at the main view screen, which currently displayed a rather unhelpful star chart overlaid with a blinking red icon denoting their rapidly depleting Thoron reserves. "Any bright ideas, Glitch?" he grumbled, his voice raspy from too much stale coffee and too little sleep. Jenna Glitch O'Malley, barely out of her teens, but with a savant-like gift for systems engineering that bordered on the alarming, swiveled in her pilot's chair. Her brightly dyed magenta hair, escaping its messy bun, seemed to defy gravity as much as her piloting often defied regulations. "Working on it, Captain," she chirped, fingers dancing across her console. "Just running a new FTL trajectory. Found a slightly unconventional route to the Lyra relay. Might shave off a good 2 days and a significant chunk of fuel." "Unconventional how?" Corbin asked, a knot of unease tightening in his gut. Glitch's unconventional usually meant highly experimental and probably voiding our already questionable insurance. "Well," she began a little too brightly, "it involves a series of micro-jumps through a gravitationally interesting sector, but the astrogation sims are holding, mostly." Before Corbin could demand a more reassuring definition of mostly, the ship gave a violent shudder that threw Dr. Elias Vance, their newly acquired and largely silent botanist, xeno-ecologist, against his crash webbing. Vance had been hired for the Viridian cluster job to assess the viability of some rumored pre-colonial biosamples on the derelict. Since the derelict yielded nothing but disappointment, he'd spent most of the return trip looking vaguely green and out of place. "Report," Corbin barked, gripping the arms of his command chair as alarms blared. "Unexpected gravitic shear," Glitch yelled over the din, fighting her controls. "Something pulled us hard. Trying to compensate, but the FTL drive is..." "Oh, that's not good." The stars on the view screen elongated into streaks of angry light, then snapped back with a nauseating lurch, replaced by an entirely unfamiliar and unsettling vista. A vast, swirling expanse of cosmic dust and incandescent gases painted the void in hues of deep violet, ghostly blues, and ominous reds. It was undeniably beautiful in a terrifying, we are so very lost kind of way. Rourke Fix Finnegan, the Retriever's grizzled chief mechanic, emerged from the engine room, access hatch, wiping grease from his hands with a rag that had seen better centuries. His face, a roadmap of past mechanical battles, was set in its usual stoic lines, but his eyes scanned the readouts with grim intensity. "Main FTL coils are fried, Captain. Flux stabilizers are shot. We're not jumping anywhere soon. And whatever that was, it knocked our primary comms offline too. We're on our own." Corbin let out a slow breath, his mind racing. Lost, damaged, low on fuel, and in an uncharted nebula. Just another Tuesday. Glitch, where in the blazes are we? Glitch, looking uncharacteristically subdued, ran diagnostics. According to the deep space sensor logs, nowhere. Or rather somewhere that isn't on any standard Terran guild charts. The system designated it Nyx Nebula. Her voice was small. "Captain, my experimental recalibration. I think I massively overshot our exit vector, or undershot it, or possibly vectored sideways into another dimension. The math got a bit fuzzy." Corbin bit back a string of curses. Berating her now wouldn't fix their engines or fill their tanks. "All right, what's done is done. Fix, damage report." "What? Can we get operational with what we have?" Fix grunted. "Sublights are fine, if a bit rattly. Life support's holding. Might be able to patch the comms antenna for short range, but it'll take time. Those FTL coils, though, we need parts we don't have, and a proper dry dock. Which we can't reach without FTL," Corbin finished, the irony not lost on him. He looked at the nebula again. It was vast, and their little ship felt like a microbe in an ocean. It was Dr. Vance who broke the tense silence. He had unstrapped himself and was peering intently at a secondary science console, his earlier malaise seemingly forgotten. "Captain," he said, his voice quiet but firm, "I'm picking up some highly unusual energy readings from deeper within the nebula, and significant complex organic particulate signatures. Very complex." Corbin raised an eyebrow. "Organic? Out here?" Nebulae were typically stellar nurseries or graveyards, not gardens. Vance nodded, his eyes alight with a flicker of scientific curiosity that Corbin hadn't seen before. "The energy signature is faint, broadband, but definitely not natural. Stellar radiation. And these organic compounds, they're not just random hydrocarbons, they show signs of sophisticated molecular structuring. Almost like spores or atmospheric plankton, but on a scale I can't comprehend." Glitch, her own curiosity piqued, brought the readings up on the main screen. A faint, almost imperceptible energy source pulsed somewhere in the nebula's swirling heart. "He's right, Captain. It's weird. Not a star, not a rogue planet. It's artificial, I think. Or at least artificially influenced." Corbin considered their options, which were depressingly few. They could sit here and wait for their air to run out, or they could investigate, the only point of interest in this entire uncharted mess. Maybe there was a derelict station, an old outpost, something with spare parts or fuel. "All right, Dr. Vance, Glitch. Plot a course for that energy signature, slow and easy. Fix, you're with Glitch. See if you can coax anything more out of those sensors. I don't want any more surprises." Fix nodded. "Understood, Captain. Keeping her steady is Glitch's job. Keeping her from shaking apart is mine." As the Rustbucket Retriever nosed its way cautiously into the depths of the Nyx Nebula, Corbin couldn't shake the feeling that Glitch's unconventional route had indeed landed them somewhere far beyond the well-trodden paths of human space. Whether that was a death sentence or a bizarre stroke of luck remained to be seen. For now, all they had was a failing ship, a flicker of strange energy, and the faintest, most desperate spark of hope. Dr. Vance, however, seemed to be growing more animated by the minute, muttering to himself about unprecedented xeno-ecological markers and potential dormant macrostructures. Corbin just hoped they wouldn't find anything that wanted to eat them. His profit margins were bad enough without adding "crew consumed by unknown entity" to his list of operational expenses. The journey towards the energy signature was slow, measured in nerve-wracking hours rather than light years. The Nyx Nebula was a deceptive beauty. Its serene clouds of dust and gas hid pockets of intense radiation, micrometeoroid streams, and gravitational eddies that kept Glitch and Fix in a constant state of alert, coaxing and cursing the Retriever's aging systems. Dr. Vance, however, was in his element. His initial seasickness replaced by an almost feverish excitement as the organic particulate count climbed and the energy readings grew more defined. "It's colossal, Captain," Glitch breathed, her voice tinged with awe as the anomaly finally resolved on the main view screen. Her earlier blunder seemed forgotten, replaced by the pure thrill of discovery. Sensor resolution is struggling with the sheer scale. Corbin leaned forward, his own pragmatic cynicism momentarily overridden by the sight before them. Emerging from the swirling violet and crimson gases like some impossible celestial titan was a structure that beggared belief. It resembled a flower, a gargantuan multi-petaled bloom crafted from a material that shimmered with an internal pearlescent light. Each petal was easily miles long, curving gracefully outwards from a central core that pulsed with the faint energy they had been tracking. Tiny lights, like dormant stars, studded its surface, and even from this distance they could discern intricate patterns and what looked like vast, shadowed indentations or openings. "By the void," Fix muttered from his station, his usual, laconic demeanor cracked. "What in the seven hells is that?" Dr. Vance was almost vibrating. "It's magnificent," he whispered, his gaze fixed on the screen. "The organic signatures are off the charts here, Captain. It's not just near the structure, it's emanating from it. Those lights, the internal temperature gradients. This isn't just a construct, it's an ecosystem." a contained, artificial, and unbelievably advanced ecosystem. He gestured towards one of the giant petals. The surface isn't smooth. I'm seeing evidence of layering, possible internal chambers, controlled environments. Corbin, despite the spectacle, felt a prickle of unease. Something this big, this advanced, wasn't built by amateurs, and its builders were nowhere in sight. Any signs of activity? Ships? Defensive systems? Glitch shook her head. Nothing active, Captain. No weapon signatures, no drive plumes, no conventional comm signals. It's quiet. Almost like it's sleeping. Dormant, perhaps. Vance corrected gently. Like a seed awaiting the right conditions or a garden in winter. He turned to Corbin, his eyes pleading. Captain, we have to get a closer look. From a purely scientific standpoint, this is the discovery of a lifetime. Of several lifetimes. Corbin weighed the risks. Their fuel was critical. Their FTL was shot. But if this Astral Bloom, as Vance had begun to call it, contained any salvageable technology, any usable resources, or even just a safe place to attempt more extensive repairs, it was their only hope. All right, Dr. Vance. You get your closer look. Glitch, take us in slowly. Target one of those petal structures, the one that looks most stable. We'll run a drone survey first. Fix, keep an eye on those particle fields. This close to the structure, they might be more intense. Aye, Captain. Fix responded, already focusing on his readouts. She's humming a bit strange, like listening to a choir through cotton wool. The drone, a small, sensor-laden remote unit, was launched from the retriever's belly. Glitch piloted it skillfully towards the nearest colossal petal, its camera feed displaying on a secondary screen. As it neared, the sheer intricacy of the Astral Bloom became apparent. The metal of its surface was a mosaic of interlocking plates, some glowing faintly, others dark and cool. What had looked like indentations from afar were revealed to be vast arching entrances into the petal's interior, some sealed, others slightly ajar, hinting at cavernous spaces within. Incredible, Vance murmured, watching the drone's feed. The atmospheric readings near that fissure. It's thin, but breathable for some hardy organisms. And the flora. Look! The drone's spotlight illuminated a section just inside a partially open hatchway. Strange crystalline plants grew in ordered patterns, pulsing with faint bioluminescence. Delicate vine-like structures clung to the walls and a fine glittering mist hung in the air. There are access points, Glitch observed, highlighting a series of regularly spaced hatches along the petal's edge. Some look like they could be manually operated or at least interfaced with. Corbin rubbed his chin. A drone survey was one thing, an EVA was another. But if they could find an entry point and scavenge some components, even something as basic as refined power conduits or navigational crystal arrays. Vance, any idea what we're looking at in terms of technology? Could there be anything compatible with our systems? Vance shook his head. The technology involved in creating this, it's orders of magnitude beyond us, Captain, but basic principles of energy generation, material science, those might be universal. If we could find a service junction, a power relay, it's a long shot. Long shots are our specialty, Corbin said grimly. All right, Glitch, you and Vance will form the initial EVA team. Focus on finding an accessible entry point and assessing the immediate interior for any salvageable tech or resources. Fix, you'll be their eyes and ears from the ship and you'll provide tech support for their suit systems. I'll hold the fort here. And for pity's sake, people, be careful. We don't know what's in there, or if whatever built it is planning on coming home for dinner. A nervous energy filled the bridge. Glitch's usual bravado was tempered with a serious focus as she checked her EVA suit interfaces. Vance, though clearly thrilled, had a similar intensity. Even Fix seemed to move with a bit more urgency as he began prepping the EVA gear. As the small airlock hissed, cycling Glitch and Vance out into the strange, silent space dominated by the colossal alien artifact, Corbin watched them on the monitor. Two tiny figures dwarfed by the sheer scale of the Astral Bloom venturing into the unknown. He hoped his gamble would pay off. Because if it didn't, the Rustbucket Retriever and its crew would become just another speck of forgotten dust in the silent grandeur of the Nyx Nebula. The exterior of the Astral Bloom was even more surreal up close. Glitch and Vance, tethered to the Rustbucket Retriever by slender safety lines, moved cautiously across the shimmering, multifaceted surface of the nearest petal. The material felt strangely warm to the touch through their suit gloves, and a faint, almost subliminal hum vibrated through their boots. "This isn't metal as we know it, Fix," Glitch reported, her voice crisp over the comms. "It's biomechanical, or a crystalline lattice with organic infusions. My suit sensors are having a field day trying to categorize it. Just make sure it doesn't decide to categorize you as lunch." Fix's dry voice crackled back from the retriever. "Corbin wants you to check out that hatch at coordinates Mark 7. Vance, meanwhile, was like a child in a cosmic candy store. He ran a small collection tool over a patch of strange amber-colored resin that oozed slowly from a hairline fracture in one of the Bloom's plates. Fascinating. Complex polypeptides, long-chain hydrocarbons. "Captain, this resin is almost like a sealant, or perhaps a nutrient transport system. This structure isn't just built, it's grown, or at least self-maintaining." "Focus, Vance," Corbin's voice cut in, firm but not unkind. "Find us that access point. We're on a tight schedule here. Fuel waits for no botanist." They reached the designated hatch. A circular iris valve nearly 10 feet in diameter, currently sealed tight. Glitch ran her multi-tool over its edges. No obvious external lock mechanism, but there are interface ports here. They look like optical data conduits. If I can just get a compatible frequency. Suddenly, a piercing alarm blared on the Retriever's bridge. Corbin snapped upright. "Fix, report. Multiple energy signatures, Captain, high velocity, inbound." They just dropped out of FTL at the nebula's edge. And they're big. Military grade by the looks of their drive emissions. On the main view screen, 5 ominous shapes resolved themselves against the backdrop of the Nyx Nebula. They were sleek, obsidian-black warships, angular and bristling with what were unmistakably weapon emplacements. Their design spoke of cold, efficient lethality. "Glitch! Vance, get back to the ship now," Corbin ordered, his voice tight with urgency. "That's not a welcoming party." The two on EVA needed no further prompting. The sight of the approaching warships was enough to override any scientific curiosity. They kicked off from the Astral Bloom's surface, using their maneuvering thrusters to propel themselves back towards the Retriever's open airlock with practiced speed. "They're hailing us, Captain," Glitch said, her voice strained as she monitored incoming transmissions from her suit's comm system even as she flew. Standard galactic common, but the tone, it's not friendly. As soon as Glitch and Vance were tumbling through the airlock, Corbin sealed it and addressed the bridge. "Put them on screen, Glitch. Let's see who our uninvited guests are." The image of an alien commander filled the main view screen. He was tall and gaunt, with sharp avian features, piercing golden eyes, and skin the color of polished obsidian, matching his ship's. He wore a severe, high-collared uniform adorned with stark, geometric insignia. Behind him, the bridge of his warship gleamed with an intimidating, sterile efficiency. "This is Prelate Theron of the Val'Kor Dominion." The alien's voice resonated, deep and imperious, perfectly translated by the Retriever's software. "You are trespassing within protected Val'Kor Heritage Site designation, Nyx 001. Identify yourselves and your intentions immediately. You are ordered to vacate this sector at once or face summary obliteration. Your vessel is clearly not authorized for passage or operations within Dominion territory." Corbin felt a cold knot form in his stomach. Dominion. That usually meant trouble, big trouble, and heritage site. This colossal flower structure. "Prelate Theron," Corbin began, trying to keep his voice even and non-threatening. "This is Captain Miles Corbin of the Terran salvage vessel Rustbucket Retriever. Our presence here is accidental. We suffered an FTL malfunction and emerged in this nebula unexpectedly. We meant no intrusion." Theron's lip curled in what might have been a sneer. "Accidental? Your ship's configuration suggests a scavenger class. This Astral Bloom is a sacred relic of our ancestors, the Starseeders. It is not to be desecrated by grubby hands seeking trinkets." Vance, who had just secured his helmet and was listening intently, spoke up, forgetting protocol in his agitation. "Sacred relic? Prelate, with respect, this structure. The Astral Bloom, it's not dead, it's dormant. I've collected samples. It shows clear signs of biological activity, complex self-repair mechanisms. He held up the small container of amber resin he'd managed to secure before the hasty retreat. This isn't just a monument, it's a living thing or capable of life. Prelate Theron's golden eyes narrowed dangerously, focusing on Vance. Silence, lesser being. Your primitive understanding defiles the sanctity of the bloom. For generations, the Val'Kor have protected it from external interference, as per the ancient directives. It is to be revered, not analyzed by your kind. Your mere presence, here is a contamination. He turned his gaze back to Corbin. You have one standard rotation of this system's primary to depart. If you are still within sensor range after that, my ships will cleanse this sector of your presence. Do not test the resolve of the Val'Kor Dominion. The transmission cut, leaving the bridge of the Rustbucket Retriever in stunned silence. Well, Fix grunted, breaking the quiet. He's a ray of sunshine, ain't he? Glitch was already running scans on the Val'Kor vessels. Captain, they're not bluffing. Those ships are packing some serious heat. Class 7 particle cannons, heavy disruptors. We wouldn't last a minute against one of them, let alone 5. Corbin looked at the Astral Bloom on the view screen, then at the distant, menacing shapes of the Val'Kor warships. Trapped, outgunned, and apparently they'd stumbled into someone else's holy ground. Vance, however, was staring at the resin, sample in his hand, a thoughtful, almost desperate expression on his face. Captain, Vance said slowly. He said protected it from external interference. What if their protection is what's keeping it dormant? What if it needs a specific kind of interference to awaken? Corbin looked at him, a wild, improbable thought beginning to form. What are you suggesting, Doctor? I'm suggesting, Vance said, his voice gaining conviction, that the Val'Kor, for all their reverence, might not fully understand what they're guarding. The ultimatum hung heavy in the recycled air of the Rustbucket Retriever's bridge. One rotation to flee, or face annihilation. Given that their FTL drive was a tangled mess of fused coils, and their sublight engines would make a tortoise look like a sprinter, fleeing wasn't a viable option. Surrender would likely mean imprisonment or worse, given Prelate Theron's openly contemptuous demeanor. He won't listen to reason, Captain, Glitch said, her fingers flying across her console, pulling up every scrap of data they had on the Val'Kor Dominion from their limited public access database. Everything here points to them being highly dogmatic, culturally rigid, and extremely territorial, especially about anything they deem heritage. Fix leaned against a bulkhead, arms crossed. So talking our way out is a bust. Fightin' is suicide. Runnin' is impossible. Kinda narrows the field, don't it? Corbin paced the small bridge, the rhythmic tap of his worn boots against the deck, plating the only sound for a long moment. His gaze kept flicking between the intimidating Val'Kor warships on the tactical display and the serene, colossal image of the Astral Bloom. Dr. Vance's words echoed in his mind. What if their protection is what's keeping it dormant? Vance, Corbin said, stopping his pacing. You said that resin you collected, the Bloom's energy network, you think it's waiting for something? Vance nodded eagerly, glad to focus on science rather than their impending doom. Yes, Captain. The resin's molecular structure is incredibly complex, almost like a condensed biological instruction set, and the energy patterns Glitch's sensors picked up from the Bloom before the Val'Kor arrived, they weren't random. There was a rhythm, a deep, slow pulse, like something in profound hibernation. I believe it's a vast, self-sustaining, ecological engine, perhaps a galactic seed bank or a terraforming catalyst. It's designed to preserve and propagate life, and the Val'Kor treat it like a museum piece. Glitch muttered. Don't touch, don't breathe, just admire from a distance. Precisely, Vance exclaimed. They might be inadvertently suppressing its primary function. If it's a seed bank, it needs to be told when and where to release its seeds. If it's a terraforming engine, it needs activation codes, environmental triggers. He held up his sample. This resin contains biosignatures, harmonic frequencies. What if we could replicate those frequencies, amplify them, and direct them at the Bloom? Corbin stared at him. You want to... what? Sing to it? In a manner of speaking, yes, Vance said, undeterred. Or more accurately, provide a specific bioenergetic stimulus. If we could broadcast a focused EM pulse encoded with the harmonic resonance patterns I've identified in this sample. Glitch, who had been listening with growing interest, suddenly snapped her fingers. Her eyes lit up with the familiar, slightly manic gleam that usually preceded a daring and highly unorthodox technical feat. The experimental FTL recalibration array, the one that got us into this mess. Its core modulation circuits are designed to generate complex, multi-layered frequency patterns. If I reroute power from the main comms amplifier and bypass about a dozen safety protocols? Fix raised a skeptical eyebrow. You want to use the thing that nearly tore the ship apart to tickle a giant space flower, while 5 warships are about to blow us to kingdom come? What could possibly go wrong? It's a long shot, Fix. A damned long shot, Corbin admitted. But it's the only shot we have that isn't passive surrender or immediate disintegration. Prelate Theron isn't going to be swayed by our charming personalities. He looked at Glitch. Can you do it? Modify the array to emit a focused pulse based on Vance's data? Glitch grinned, a spark of defiance in her eyes. Captain, I can make this old Rustbucket sing opera if you give me enough caffeine and a big enough wrench. It'll be tight. I'll have to bypass the primary targeting safeties on the comms dish to get a narrow enough beam and divert auxiliary power. We'll be dark to external sensors for a few minutes during the charge-up. And the Val'Kor? Fix rumbled. I'll try to stall Theron, Corbin said, his mind already working on a script of feigned technical difficulties and pleas for clarification. Vance, get Glitch those frequency parameters. Fix, you're with Glitch. If anything, looks like it's about to explode prematurely. I want you there to hit it with something heavy. Standard procedure, Captain, Fix said with a rare, grim smile. The bridge became a hive of focused activity. Vance hunched over a science station, rapidly sequencing the bioharmonic data from the resin and relaying it to Glitch. Glitch, her earlier apprehension gone, was a whirlwind of motion, her fingers flying across her console, virtual conduits rerouting on her display, sparks occasionally flying from a jury-rigged interface panel she'd practically bolted to the main board. Fix stood beside her, a large hydro spanner in hand, occasionally offering a gruff suggestion or physically nudging a reluctant connection into place. Corbin opened a channel to the Val'Kor flagship. Prelate Theron, this is Captain Corbin. We are attempting to comply with your directive, but our FTL drive is more extensively damaged than initially assessed. We request your patience as we endeavor to effect rudimentary repairs for a sublight. Departure. Theron's voice, when it came, was like ice. Your incompetence is not the Dominion's concern, Terran. The deadline stands. Do not imagine your theatrics will earn you leniency. Understood, Prelate, Corbin said, trying to inject a note of weary resignation into his voice. We are merely requesting a minimal buffer, should our initial attempts to clear the immediate vicinity be slower than optimal. He was buying minutes, seconds, anything to give Glitch and Vance time. Almost there, Captain, Glitch muttered, her brow furrowed in concentration. Power conduits rerouted, frequency modulation locked, targeting the specific pedal sector we surveyed earlier. This is either going to be brilliant or spectacularly disastrous. That's usually your sweet spot, Glitch, Corbin said, managing a faint smile. He looked at the tactical display. The Val'Kor ships were holding their position, but their weapon ports were visibly energized. The clock was ticking. Whenever you're ready. Glitch took a deep breath. Brace yourselves, firing the Gardener's Gambit, now. She slammed her hand down on a newly installed, ominously glowing activation stud. The Rustbucket Retriever gave a distinct shudder as power surged through Glitch's jury-rigged comms array. Lights dimmed on the bridge, and a high-pitched whine emanated from the repurposed FTL recalibration circuits, a sound that vibrated in their teeth. On the main view screen, the targeted section of the Astral Bloom, the massive kilometers-long petal they had surveyed with the drone, remained impassive for a terrifying 3 seconds. Corbin held his breath. Fix gripped his hydro spanner tighter. Vance stared, his face a mask of desperate hope. Then, it happened. A faint ripple like heat haze over a summer road, shimmered across the surface of the targeted petal. It started subtly, then intensified, intricate patterns of soft internal light flowing like luminous veins beneath its pearlescent skin. The light was not harsh or weaponized, but gentle, intricate. A complex, bioluminescent calligraphy tracing, unseen pathways. It's responding. Glitch gasped, her console flickering wildly as it tried to process the anomalous energy readings. The whine from her modified array intensified, then died with a shower of sparks and a puff of acrid smoke from the overloaded circuits. Well, the emitters fried, but look. The targeted petal of the Astral Bloom was now bathed in a soft, ethereal glow. A localized energy field, shimmering and opalescent, enveloped it, distinct from the rest of the colossal structure. And then the most astonishing thing occurred. From the previously barren-looking access points and fissures along the petal's surface, new life began to unfurl with an impossible time-lapsed speed. Delicate fern-like structures of pneumania, their fronds glittering with captured nebular light, spiraled outwards. Flowers of alien design, colored in hues that had no name in human language, opened their intricate corollas. Vines, like living silver threads, wove new patterns across the ancient surface. It was as if a hyperspeed spring had come to one small section of the galactic winter garden. Simultaneously, the Astral Bloom emitted a sound, or rather, a resonance. It wasn't a sound transmitted through the vacuum, but a deep, complex, melodic wave of energy that washed over everything in the vicinity. On the bridge of the Retriever, screens flickered and a low thrumming filled the air, making the deck plates vibrate. Targeting system scrambled. Glitch yelped, looking at her tactical display. The Val'Kor ships, their weapon locks are offline. Ours too, not that we had much to lock with. Corbin stared, dumbfounded. The Val'Kor warships, moments before poised to unleash devastation, were now visibly adrift, their previously steady formations wavering. The climax of the Bloom's response was yet to come. The large circular hatch that Glitch and Vance had examined earlier, the one that had been stubbornly sealed, began to move. With a silent, graceful precision that belied its immense size, the iris valve dilated, revealing a softly lit, inviting opening into the depths of the petal. On the Val'Kor flagship, Prelate Theron stood rigid, his sharp avian features etched with disbelief. His bridge officers were in disarray, their usually composed voices rising in confusion as they reported system malfunctions and the unprecedented behavior of the Astral Bloom. The sacred relic, the static monument they had guarded for generations with unwavering fearful reverence, had just done something beautiful, something impossible. What is this? Theron's voice, usually so imperious, was a choked whisper, unheard by the humans, but evident in his stunned posture on their view screen, which had flickered back to life, albeit unsteadily. Aboard the Rustbucket Retriever, the atmosphere was electric. Relief, awe, and a healthy dose of terror warred for dominance. It worked, Vance breathed, tears welling in his eyes. He looked utterly transfixed. It actually worked. It's alive. It was just waiting for the right key. Fix slowly, lowered his hydro spanner. Well, I'll be a greasy cog, he muttered, shaking his head. Never thought I'd see a spaceship bloom. Glitch, despite the smoking ruin of her custom array, was beaming. Bioharmonics for the win, see, Captain? Sometimes my unconventional ideas pan out. Corbin could only nod, a slow grin spreading across his face. They were still in deep trouble, undoubtedly, but they were alive and they had just witnessed a miracle. More importantly, they had caused it. A crew of down-on-their-luck human salvagers in their battered old ship had managed to awaken a power that a galactic dominion had only ever feared and misunderstood. The single awakened petal of the Astral Bloom pulsed gently, a beacon of vibrant, impossible life in the cold, silent expanse of the Nyx Nebula. It was a single note of defiance, a whisper of ancient purpose, and for the crew of the Rustbucket Retriever, it was a lifeline. The immediate chaos on the Val'Kor warships caused by the Astral Bloom's resonance wave was palpable even from the Rustbucket Retriever. Their tight formations had loosened, and their previously unwavering focus on the human vessel was clearly disrupted. The awakened petal of the bloom, however, continued its serene, vibrant display, a stark contrast to the Val'Kor's momentary disarray. Then, a new phenomenon began. The activated section of the Astral Bloom started to emit a broader, more passive transmission. It wasn't a hail, not language as any of them understood it, but a dense, complex stream of data that washed over the Retriever's sensors. Glitch, her initial exhilaration giving way to focused intensity, quickly rerouted auxiliary sensor arrays to capture and decode what she could. Captain, I'm getting schematics, star charts, complex organic chemical formulae, genetic sequences. It's an unbelievable amount of information, she reported, her eyes wide as data scrolled across her screen. It's like the bloom is outputting its own instruction manual, or a catalog. Dr. Vance, practically vibrating with excitement, moved to a secondary science station, hastily reactivated by Fix, who, despite his earlier skepticism, was now observing the bloom with a newfound respect. Let me see that, Glitch, the patterns, the sequences. Yes, it's exactly as I theorized. This isn't just a structure, it's an archive. A repository of xeno-botanical knowledge, ecological blueprints for countless worlds, he pointed to a complex spiraling diagram on the screen. Look at this, these are star charts but overlaid with potential viability indexes for specific phyla of flora. It's showing which kinds of life would flourish in which stellar environments. It's a guide from the star seeders, a map for galactic gardeners. Corbin watched, fascinated. The Val'Kor had called the original builders the Starseeders. It seemed an apt name. This colossal artifact wasn't a tomb or a monument to a dead civilization. It was a living library, a dynamic tool designed to propagate and sustain life across the cosmos. On the Val'Kor flagship, Prelate Theron had regained some of his composure, though his golden eyes still held a flicker of shock and uncertainty. He barked orders, and his science officers, equally bewildered but visibly intrigued by the sudden flood of unique data emanating from the bloom, scrambled to analyze the phenomenon. They had guarded this structure for centuries, following ancient edicts to protect its sanctity through isolation. Never had it responded like this. Never had it revealed itself. Captain, Vance said, his voice earnest, we need to share this with them. Theron called us defilers, but our defilement has resulted in this revelation. He believes the bloom is a static relic. We can show him it's a dynamic, generative force. Corbin considered this. It was risky. Theron could still decide to obliterate them once his systems were back online. But the alternative was to let this moment pass, to allow the Val'Kor to potentially misinterpret this awakening as some kind of defensive measure and revert to their hostile stance. All right, Vance, Corbin decided. You're up. Glitch, can you open a channel to Theron's flagship? No visuals of us, just voice. Let's not overwhelm him with our scruffy human faces just yet. Channel open, Captain, Glitch confirmed a moment later. He's listening, though I suspect angrily is his default listening mode. Prelate Theron, Corbin began, his voice calm and measured. This is Captain Corbin. We understand our actions may have been unorthodox, but as you can see, the Astral Bloom is not as your traditions have perhaps led you to believe. Dr. Vance, our xeno-ecologist, has some initial insights into its true nature, which he would like to share, if you are willing to listen. There was a long silence from the Val'Kor end. Corbin could almost hear the internal struggle Theron must be experiencing. Finally, the prelate's voice came, still cold, but with a new note of grudging curiosity. Your unorthodox actions have momentarily disabled my fleet's primary offensive capabilities, Terran. Speak, but choose your words carefully. The Dominion does not suffer fools gladly, nor those who trifle with the sacred. Vance leaned towards the microphone, his voice filled with a passion that transcended the tension of the moment. Prelate Theron, the Astral Bloom is not merely a relic. It is a living ark, a dynamic repository of unimaginable ecological wealth. The Starseeders didn't intend for it to be a sealed monument, but a tool for the proliferation of life. The data it is now emitting, it's a key, a guide. It offers schematics for sustainable ecosystems, genetic archives of species capable of thriving in diverse environments. Your people have guarded it, yes, but in doing so, you may have inadvertently kept it from its true purpose, to share its gifts. Another pause. Then one of Theron's science officers could be heard in the background on the Val'Kor bridge, his voice excited. Prelate, the Terran speaks truth. The data streams, they are coherent, scientifically valid, unbelievably advanced, but logical. This matches some of the most obscure passages in the oldest sacred texts, the ones we dismissed as metaphorical. Theron was silent for another moment. When he spoke again, much of the ice had melted from his tone, replaced by a profound uncertainty. The ancient directives speak of guarding the seed of worlds until the time of unfurling. We always interpreted that as preventing its destruction, keeping it isolated. We never considered. He trailed off. Perhaps the time of unfurling requires a catalyst, Vance offered gently. A specific interaction. Your guardianship kept it safe. Our desperate, perhaps clumsy curiosity provided that catalyst. Corbin saw a glimmer of an opening, a chance to turn this confrontation into something else entirely. The Val'Kor were clearly shaken, their deeply ingrained beliefs challenged by irrefutable evidence. The humans, the accidental intruders, had stumbled upon a truth that generations of Val'Kor had missed. It was a fragile moment, a seed of understanding that, if nurtured, might just save all their skins and achieve something far greater. The silence on the comm channel stretched, thick with unspoken questions and the weight of generations of Val'Kor dogma being reassessed in real time. Prelate Theron was clearly wrestling with a profound internal conflict. The Astral Bloom, their most sacred artifact, was behaving in ways their lore had never predicted, and these Terrans, these accidental interlopers, were somehow at the heart of it. Finally, Theron's voice returned, stripped of its earlier arrogance, now tinged with a weary gravitas. Terran Captain Corbin, Dr. Vance, your actions have precipitated a paradigm shift in our understanding. The data emanating from the Astral Bloom is undeniable. We will observe. For now, hostilities are suspended. We will not fire upon your vessel. A collective sigh of relief went through the Rustbucket Retriever's bridge. It wasn't a pardon, but it was a start. Prelate, Corbin said, seizing the opportunity. We have no wish for conflict. Dr. Vance believes the bloom is now in a receptive state. Perhaps this time of unfurling is meant to involve more than just observation. Perhaps it's an invitation to learn, to participate. Vance elaborated. Prelate, the bloom seems to be sharing its knowledge. This isn't just a display, it's an offering. With your advanced technology and our fresh perspective, perhaps we can learn how to properly interface with it, to understand its full potential for the benefit of all life it was designed to nurture. Glitch, ever the pragmatist but now caught up in the sheer wonder of it all, had an idea. Captain Prelate, those interface ports we saw on the pedal, the ones I couldn't crack with our limited tech, the bloom is now actively transmitting. If the Val'Kor have compatible data conduit technology, they might be able to establish a more stable direct link. And based on the energy schematics the bloom is now showing, she gestured to her console, where new, incredibly complex diagrams were unfolding. I think I see how its energy regulation system works. It might be possible to attune it, to make it more receptive to Val'Kor energy signatures, so they can become its active caretakers, not just passive guardians. Theron listened intently. The audacity of the young human engineer was startling, yet her words carried the ring of logic, especially now that his own science officers were excitedly corroborating the Terran's observations about the bloom's active data streams. Your engineer proposes a collaboration? He asked, the concept clearly foreign but no longer anathema. She proposes a way for the Val'Kor to fulfill the Starseeder's true intent, Corbin clarified gently. To become true stewards of this incredible gift, we can offer our initial understanding, guide your technicians with what we've learned from our accidental activation. There was a long pause. Then, Theron made a decision that would ripple through Val'Kor society for eons. Very well. We will dispatch a technical team to your vessel's coordinates under truce. They will work with your engineer and your xeno-ecologist. We will attempt this attunement. He paused. And the Dominion will ensure your vessel is repaired and resupplied for your journey home. You came as intruders, Terrans, but perhaps you leave as catalysts. The following days were a blur of cautious, then increasingly enthusiastic collaboration. A Val'Kor shuttle, sleek and far more advanced than anything the Retriever possessed, docked carefully. Their technicians, initially stiff and suspicious, were brilliant and quick learners. Under Glitch's surprisingly patient guidance and Vance's insightful interpretations of the Bloom's ongoing data transmissions, they managed to establish a stable interface with the awakened petal. Glitch's proposed modifications to the Bloom's local energy regulation, allowing it to recognize and respond to Val'Kor energy signatures, were implemented with a combination of human ingenuity and Val'Kor precision engineering. Fix, in his element, worked alongside the Val'Kor to repair the Retriever's FTL drive, finding a grudging respect for their advanced but overly rigid technology, while they, in turn, were baffled and occasionally impressed by his ability to make ancient systems perform far beyond their original specifications with little more than percussive encouragement and sheer willpower. As the Rustbucket Retriever, its FTL drive humming, more smoothly than it had in years and its hold stocked with provisions prepared to depart the Nyx Nebula, Prelate Theron hailed them one last time. His image on the view screen was still severe, but the harsh lines around his eyes had softened. Captain Corbin, Dr. Vance, Engineer O'Malley, Mechanic Finnegan, Theron said, the formal address a sign of respect. The Val'Kor Dominion is in your debt. You have opened our eyes to a truth we were too blind to see. The Astral Bloom is now more alive than it has been for millennia. My science teams are already cataloging wonders beyond our imagining. We will be its students and its guardians in a new light. Corbin nodded. We were just in the wrong place at the right time, Prelate. Or maybe the right place. Take care of the garden. We will, Captain, Theron affirmed. The Starseeder's legacy will flourish. Safe journey, Terrans. As the Rustbucket Retriever engaged its newly repaired FTL drive, leaving the vibrant Nyx Nebula and the now partially awakened Astral Bloom behind, its crew was quiet. They were still just a small battered salvage ship, but they had stumbled into the heart of a galactic mystery, and through a combination of desperation, curiosity, and a uniquely human refusal to just lie down and die, had changed the course of an alien empire and safeguarded a treasure of unimaginable worth. Glitch was already sketching designs for a bioharmonic resonator Mark II. Vance was meticulously cataloging the data recordings from the Bloom, a lifetime of research. Ahead of him, Fix was grumbling about the overly sensitive tolerances of Val'Kor engine components, but there was a hint of a smile on his face. Captain Miles Corbin looked out at the star-streaked blur of FTL travel. They hadn't found any salvageable scrap or made a single credit. In fact, this whole detour had been a financial disaster. But as he thought of the colossal, vibrant flower unfurling in the depths of space, he knew they had found something far more valuable. They were accidental heroes, the unlikely gardeners who had helped a cosmic seed to sprout. And for a pragmatic, debt-ridden captain of a rust-bucket ship, that felt surprisingly, profoundly, like a win. The galaxy was a vast and wondrous place, and sometimes even the smallest, most out-of-luck humans could help it bloom.